Hello, I am making my wedding dress. Woohoo! I'm actually making me and my fiance's wedding dresses, which is so exciting, and it will be a very, very long series because there's 2 dresses to make. We both decided we wanted short dresses because it's a very simple registry office wedding. We're just like going to the pub afterwards with some friends and some family. By the way, if you're in the States, a registry office wedding is just a courthouse wedding. So yeah, it's going to be pretty simple, and we want to have our dresses coordinate. Like, we want them to be out of the same materials and be the same color, but we both have very different styles. They're both going to be A-line skirts, but our tops and our sleeves are going to be completely different. She's wanting something more along of like a puff sleeve, more along a kind of selkie dress inspired dress, and I want a corset with off the shoulder bell sleeves because I love a bell sleeve. I have so many bell sleeve things in my wardrobe. Not today. I should have worn it today. Also, if you're new here, which you probably are because this is the first video I'm posting on YouTube, my name is Kahe. I do sewing and crafting and DIY and random projects of the like. So please subscribe and like this video if you like it and want to follow along on my chaotic sewing journey, because I am chaotic. Very much so. So for both of our wedding dresses, we are going to have to do a crazy amount of mock-ups because in general, the dresses that we want, I could not find a pattern for that I liked. And so I found patterns that we'll use to do for parts of the dresses, but it's not, I'm doing a lot of custom modifications on both of our patterns. But today I want to focus on my dress and doing the mock-up for the corset of my dress. Now, I found this great pattern.
This one was on Etsy. It's by Dart and Dagger, and I would highly recommend it. I really enjoyed using it, and I've linked it below, and I'll definitely be looking at their patterns in the future.
I really love the like point and swoopy bit of it. The point and swoopy bit of it, because I am a professional. I know these things. I worked in bridal for many years, and all I can say is the point and swoopy bit. It's just crazy. But yeah, so I'm gonna be making this mock-up, and I figure, you know, why go through the whole hassle of making a mock-up of the corset if I then don't get to wear it afterwards? So I'm making it out of some fabric that I thrifted ages ago and I really love, and I have some like lovely gorgeous chiffon fabric that I can line it with. We have a friend's wedding in August that we're going to, and I figured kill 2 birds with 1 stone, make this mock-up, get the experience of making the corset, and then wear this mock-up to the wedding. But without further ado, here is the footage of me making this corset.
Okay, I started out like a good sewist, and I actually ironed my fabric, which I don't normally do, but it was really wrinkly. And then I'm just cutting out a smaller section just so that I don't like make weird cuts into all of the rest of the fabric. And I am a big fan of using these water-soluble fabric pens. I just find that it helps me get a lot neater cuts. Now, completely off camera, I lost all of the footage of cutting out the other fabric and pinning this all together. But essentially, I'm just assembling the very slowly. I did not realize that I sew so slowly, but I'm just assembling all the pattern pieces. So here's where I noticed I made an error. This pattern calls for the middle panel to have an opening in the middle of that section. So what I did is I completely unpicked this, like just a small section in it, and then I tacked down the end so the a top and bottom of the seam. And later you'll see that that helps me to sew all the way around the corset and then flip it out through that center kind of seam in the lining, or center opening in the lining. And here I'm just clipping the curves with my pinking shear. It probably doesn't do much, but I thought it would help the curves lay better. And here I am without a tailor's ham because I really need to make one. However, I don't have that yet at this point. So I was using the edge of a small pillow to to iron the curves. And this was very hard. I definitely next project I'm making a tailor's ham. And here you did not get to see me sewing together all of these pieces because, again, I lost the footage. But yeah, I'm ironing down my seams, which if you're a beginning sewist and you're tired of people telling you to iron your seams, I'm so sorry. You gotta. My world changed when I started doing that. And here with the same water-soluble pen, I'm marking out the seam allowance so that I can measure out how much boning I'll need. And this, I didn't get the measurements right, by the way. I got the seam allowance measurement right, but I'll spoil it for you. I cut the boning way too short, but I have spent the last several projects accidentally cutting the boning too long. So here I was trying to, be a little bit better and cut it a little bit shorter. I think on like this first one it was fine, but the next couple were way too short. But I kept going with it. For this one I'm using Ridgeline boning in my actual wedding dress. I'm definitely going to be using the, what is it called? Synthetic whalebone. I'm going to be using the synthetic whalebone. But enjoy me struggling and measuring out all these boning pieces. Okay, now I'm gonna warn you. I am doing something that you should not do yourself. I say do not try this at home. Please don't, because this time was fine. But I have injured myself in the past by doing this. But essentially, my silly self is melting the edges of the boning channel so they don't poke me. However, this was not needed, as you'll see in a second, because instead of making boning channels and slipping them in, I decided, you know what, this Ridgeline boning you can sew through, and I think I'm just going to sew through it to ensure that it doesn't poke me or stick out at all. And so rarely on this channel are you gonna hear videos of the sewing, so let's just listen to it. Come on. It's coming, I swear. Wow, isn't that just gorgeous? I am often listening to either a D&D campaign or some podcast or some show, so it's a rarity that the audio will actually be just of me sewing. Okay, so I've just finished all of the boning. I haven't done the channels yet, so this one's I sewed it the wrong direction, but it'll be fine because I'll flatten that down. But the reason I've done these in the inside is because I hate when boning pokes out. And this type of boning is the one that's mainly used in fast fashion corsets and things. And I always feel like it eventually pokes out, even if it's even with the kind of, what's it called? The fire that I did to melt the ends. I always feel like it pokes out. I've even had, ooh, hello, knocking my camera. I've also had it where the corset bone slides out of the socket because part of it comes unraveled, and I just didn't want that to happen. So what I realized is I think I cut them all a tiny bit too short because they are all a good amount of distance from the bottom. But I decided I don't care, and I decided that I will
if I need to just make this shorter in general, because I don't really mind that. But I am now going to put the waist tape in. And I have this lovely ribbon I got for 50p at the charity shop, which I love. I love finding ribbons in the charity shop, or I love finding just sewing materials in the charity shop. So instead of though like doing like what I did before in the mock-up where I'm like sewing it directly to everything, I think I'm just gonna sew it down, like pin it all in place. And then I'm gonna do proper like channels for the boning pieces so these don't like peek up or anything or twist. I'll do boning channels and I'll just sew it over top of the waist tape. That way it's not like connected to the front, but it's like connected along these like vertically, I guess.
Yeah, ignore my neighbor's child in the background of that last clip. But here I am again, using this fabric pen. It saves my life every time. It's changed my sewing game. Highly recommend. But yeah, I'm just pinning down the waist tape on the sections of the boning channels before sewing it. And now I am going to take this time to do the obligatory YouTube self-promotion that feels awful. But please subscribe if you want to see more sewing content, more DIY stuff, or if you just want to be nice to a random internet stranger. Either way, it is very appreciated. And now back to your regularly scheduled sewing.
Hello. I am now pinning the lining to the corset, which is very exciting. I'm so glad I stitched the boning down and like then stitched the channels, which I know seems counterintuitive, but this fabric frays so badly that I don't think the boning channels would have stayed in. I think they would have been poking me the whole time. Now, the fabric that I'm using for my actual wedding dress, and not just, corset to see how I like it, that I probably won't do that on because I'm using nicer boning. I'm using synthetic whalebone instead of this kind of Ridgeline boning, because the Ridgeline is not that high quality, but the synthetic whalebone is, and that's really exciting. So I probably won't do that on the final one, but for this one I want it to last me longer than most of like the fast fashion corsets do, which by the way, I don't buy fast fashion firsthand. I always buy like it on Vinted or from charity shops or something like that. But yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I'm quite happy. It was a really easy process to do the waist tape, and the fact that it's just stitched down in those channels there is quite nice. I really like it. I think I also showed, but when I sewed up the lining, they have this little hole here. So instead of, in a lot of corsets, you'll like bind the edges. But on this one, I'm literally sewing around the entire thing, and then I'll flip it right side out, through this little hole. That is a little hole that does not remind me of anything. So I'm pinning it now. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch this top here first, and then stitch on the sides and the bottom, but I just want to get like a clean line through the top without like pulling in different directions, and then I'll sew the rest of it and see where it's at from there. I'm so excited. I'm really thrilled with how this is turning out. And it's actually not been that many days to do. And this has taken me like 2 full days so far, and I think by the time I'm done with the grommets and everything, this will be 3 full days making this corset, which means that making the wedding dress is going to be even easier. I hope. Okay, Okay, I say I'm gonna start sewing and finish this up, but I'm noticing how this corner is very floppy, and I would say the only gripe I have in this pattern is that they don't account for like a boning channel to go up here. But what I'm thinking is that I will add my own kind of support. I have all these little like wiry twist ties. I always save these because I think they're so good for managing cables. And what I might do is I might put this in the seam allowance so that it can be like a little wire standing up and it doesn't seem sharp enough to like poke out. So I might do that as well. See that. We'll look at this one first, get it understitched, and then worry about that.
Now, I'm sure that you can tell this is not a tutorial, and this was not recommended by the pattern instructions. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I'll tell you in the end too, but this does not work. It does not work. Just add interfacing to your pattern, or add another boning channel that leads up to that point. Don't do what I did, because it barely did anything, and it was really fiddly and took a while. And here you see me doing another good sewing deed. Not deed, I don't know. Good sewing practice, where I'm pressing my seams and I'm understitching. Now, even the pattern will tell you that you can't understitch on every part of this design, just because the points you really can't understitch. But however, I did to the sections that I could, and it definitely made a difference in the final result, I think. It just lays smoother. And after I did that, I went ahead and stitched all the way around the corset, because again on this one we can just flip it outside through the middle. And here you see me cutting off all the extra seam allowance that was because of the boning channels that were too short, but you know, hey, it worked. And now I'm just pressing my seams like a good little sewist. Yeah, I'm really happy that this pattern, you just flip it through the middle rather than binding the edges. I know I've talked about that before already in this video, but super handy. And off camera, after this, I added a final boning piece to the end there. You can kind of see it. I stuffed it in through the middle and then did a seam over top of all of the pieces, just to have some reinforcement by the seam allowance there. And now I'm just measuring out where all the grommets are gonna go. I will say I am really bad at maths, so it takes me so long to use a ruler and figure out the placements of things, and most times I just give up and go by eye. So here I don't have a punch for these, so I'm using a seam ripper and some little tiny embroidery scissors to make these holes. I wouldn't say this is the easiest way to do this. Definitely having a little punch for the hole, or an awl. I really should get an awl, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm using these little heron scissors, which I think are so cute, and just kind of placing them in and opening them kind of like an awl would. But I really should get one. But you know, I'm one of those people that I like to use the things I have, and I get really, I don't know, for me to purchase a new sewing tool, it just makes me not angry or upset. It's just more like I'm gonna find a way to do it without buying a new tool, which I think is stubbornness, but I'm gonna disguise it as sustainability. And now here you can see me struggling like I did on every single one with this method to insert the grommets, but again, it did work. I do have this grommet press that came with 1,000 grommets, all of the same size in the gold, and I use this size a lot. It's really good for various projects, and I'm gonna continue to use it, but it's much better than the hammering method in my opinion. I get much cleaner presses. And now the final step's just to hand sew that opening in the lining and lace up the corset. So I finished the corset. However,
I want to add sleeves. But, so you can see what I'm talking about. This is the finished corset as is. It's so nice. I really, really like the structure of it. I like how it sits. I do think, like, you can see in the back that this gap here should be the same throughout it all. Also, I didn't make the modesty panel because, I don't know, I like it as is. I like showing where my skirt starts. I like kind of the exposed back there. I don't know. I don't feel like adding the modesty panel, so I didn't. But I know technically this should fit a little bit snugger in. However, I don't really care. I quite like it. I feel really comfortable in it. And I don't think I would need any more through like this, the front of the hip, because the sides hit me really good. It's just more through the back, I think. But I don't really feel like adjusting the pattern. I feel really great in it overall. But I will say my only gripe is these little guys. They just don't seem to stay upright, and that is on me because I didn't use stabilizer and the pattern calls for it, so I should have used it. I do wish there was another corset line because I feel like that would be even more reinforced, and I might do that. But I don't know. It's okay. While I love this, I think I want it to be a little bit flouncier. And I think the solution to both this and the more flounce is adding some little cute off-the-shoulder flounce sleeves. I feel like that neckline on me is my favorite kind of neckline. I feel like it's so romantic, it's so whimsical, and if you can't tell, that's one of my favorite things to be. But I'm gonna make these sleeves now, and then once those are made, I will show you the reveal.
I started out just making just tubes that I sewed and flipped inside out, and then attached, like hand sewed to the corset, and you'll see why this does not work.
I should always measure. I should always follow a pattern. What if I made channel, like a channel in the top for elastic so that it is all bunched at the top? Nice. It's all bunched at the top throughout evenly. I don't know. I just don't know. It'll be fine. But we'll see.
And my friends, it was fine. The elastic looks so cute. There I am just flipping inside out after adding that channel, and it really did wonders. So I just hand stitched that to the corset. And now it's time for the reveal.
Okay, it's all finished. I'm actually super, super happy with this. I love the sleeves. I'm really glad I sewed them on at the last minute. I think it just makes it look that much more elegant, that much more fun as well. Things I would probably change in the future. Definitely these guys. Definitely adding a line of interfacing, or potentially another boning channel here. And I'll definitely put the skirt from my wedding dress over top of at the waist here, because I did notice that, can you see? I don't know if you can see the shot, but the back of this dress, definitely the hips are too small. And when I had tried it on before and in the mock-up and stuff, I don't know, I thought that they were okay, but looking back, this is where it really fits comfortably, and I think I should have gone bigger, like adjusted the pattern to be slightly bigger in the hips. However, for my wedding dress, which is when I'll be remaking this pattern, I think I'm only going to do down to the waistline. I don't think I'm going to do the full corset, or if I do the full corset, I'll make this as it is because I don't really need it to be super cinched in the hips. And again, because I'm going to be putting my wedding skirt on top of it. The sleeves are not going to be what I do for my wedding dress, and I do need to do a little mock-up of those. We're 2 months out. We're 2 months out from the wedding. Little over 2 months, but still 2 months. And I'm doing my master's dissertation. It's due a week before the wedding. I don't know why I did this to myself, but it's fine. But the sleeves on this one that I did make, I can't believe I just won that. I think they're so cute. That elastic is perfect because it's such a stiff fabric. Having the elastic makes it look cute and like still drapey, but has this nice like ruffle to it. Yeah, I'm so thrilled with this. So thank you for watching. If you want to follow along on my journey of both making my wedding dress and my fiance's wedding dress, and also just sewing and crafting and DIY stuff, you can subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.